Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I'm sharing something a little bit different. I am sharing how I create my own DIY foam tape. Yes, I know this may seem a little bit fussy, but quite honestly, recently I noticed a change in my preferred foam tape, and I went on the search for something that I would like a little more. And my friend Leah Lawson kind of turned me on to this idea of making these adhesive-backed pieces of craft foam that fit my card fronts perfectly. Now, they create a really sturdy foam base, so there's no sagging when you place these on the back, and they're super sticky. Now, I had my husband, the math teacher, help me with some quick calculations on price per square inch, and we found that this DIY foam tape is actually significantly less expensive than the foam tape that I was using before. I am using this 5-inch score tape or Be Creative tape, as well as some white craft foam from Michaels. And I will be sure to link all the products that I use below. So I have this 12 by 18-inch craft foam that I purchased. It's about $1 a sheet. And I have this large roll of 5-inch wide Be Creative tape. And what I'm going to do is basically cover this entire sheet of 12 by 18 craft foam with this Be Creative tape. Now I start at the corner and the bottom edge of this and just kind of place it down. This one, I kind of take a little time to make sure I get it as straight as possible. In the end, it really doesn't matter. And once I get it laid down, I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to use some non-stick scissors. This is really important to trim this off. Now it trims pretty easily, just like when you trim wrapping paper down. You can just slide the edge of your scissors along the edge of the craft foam, and then you can move on to the next strip. Now I butt this adhesive right up to the edge of the other adhesive, and it's not overlapping, but it's kind of butted up right to the edge. And I lay down this next strip of adhesive, and then once again, I'm going to flip it over and trim it off. Now I'm going to follow this process until I cover both the front and the back with this adhesive. And once I get all of the adhesive placed onto the craft foam, then I'm going to take it over to my trimmer and I'm going to start trimming it down into sizes that are usable for me. Now the thing that I really like about this is I can trim this down into manageable sizes. I can make 3.5 by 5-inch pieces for my card fronts, or I can make 4 by 5-inch pieces. I tend to keep it at about 5 inches. And I can also use some of the leftover scraps and cut those down for smaller pieces of foam adhesive. Now, the thing that you want to remember about this foam adhesive is that it is super sticky. So when you place this on your card front or whatever piece that you're using, you want to make sure that you are placing this in the exact spot where you want it, because it's very hard to rip up if you place it in the wrong spot. And that's probably one of the drawbacks of this, but it gives me such a firm and sturdy foam base that I really have been enjoying it. Now, one thing I did want to mention is you don't necessarily have to use a 5-inch score tape. I just find that this measurement works for me. If a 4.5-inch score tape works better for you, or if you have a 2-inch score tape in your craft stash and you want to try using that, you can do that as well. You just want to make sure that you're covering both the front and the back of this craft foam with this adhesive. Now, there are also sheets of Be Creative or score tape adhesive, but I feel like those are a little more expensive than the rolls of adhesive. So I just order the rolls of adhesive and I use that. So now I have my entire piece of craft foam covered with this very sticky Be Creative tape or score tape, whatever you want to call it. And I've gone ahead and covered a few of these. Now, I like to do this all in big batches so I have it ready to go when I'm ready to craft. Now I'm going to take this over to my trimmer and I am going to start trimming this down. Now I really like to use this Fiskars aluminum rail trimmer for this because the blades are interchangeable. So I will often do this at the end of my blade life before I change it. And that way I avoid getting any sticky or adhesive residue on my other trimmers where I cannot replace the blade. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention is that this trimmer doesn't actually cut all the way through all of the adhesive and the craft foam. I'm basically just creating these straight score lines that then I can fold the foam back and run my scissors along that edge to cut it down. Now, you may have a more sturdy trimmer that will go through all of these layers, but as I mentioned, I don't want to ruin or muck up the blade of my other trimmers, so this actually works pretty well and it's pretty quick. You can see I just kind of fold on that line that I created with my trimmer, stick my scissors into that, what I call a score line, and then just kind of run the blade of my scissors up that score line. And sometimes it just slides right through. Sometimes it gets a little caught in areas, but most of the time it just slides right through on that score line. Now you're going to notice when I trim this down, I have about a 2-inch or 2.5-inch piece here. I guess it would be a 3-inch piece when I do the math. That is kind of left over. You could cover that with some adhesive as well and use that, or you can glue it onto the back of things. You can use that however you see fit. Now, once I have these trimmed down into 5-inch by 12-inch pieces, I'm going to go back to my trimmer and I'm going to trim these down again. Now, there's two common sizes that I create. I usually create a 5 by 3.5-inch piece. And I also create a 5 by 4-inch piece. Now the 4-inch piece covers the entire 12-inch width of this, so I don't have any left over. When I create these 3.5-inch pieces, there is about, I don't know, 1.5 inches left over. I save those and I use them to put behind sentiment strips. I cut them down and put them behind stamped images. So I find that I use those up just as much as I use these larger panels of foam adhesive as well. So once I've gone through and I have created those score lines at that 3.5-inch mark, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to place the scissors into that score line and just trim these apart. Now, this is a good project for me to do when I feel like being in my craft room, but I'm not feeling very creative. So this is kind of one of those prep projects that I can do on a Sunday afternoon or something like that when I'm in the craft room and just kind of organizing, cleaning up for the week and kind of getting myself ready. And you can see in no time at all, I have a huge stack of these foam panels that I can then place on my card fronts and give dimension to those. It makes it fast and easy, and when I'm ready to create, they're ready to go. And all of these scraps are things that I will trim down and use for sentiments. Now, I like to use the 5-inch piece because most of these pieces that I create are 5 inches by another dimension. If you find yourself wanting the height of your panels to be a little bit shorter, like a 4.5-inch height, you could get away with the 4.5-inch adhesive. I like to try to cut kind of between those adhesive lines on the craft foam, but in the end, I really don't think it matters. So I've covered more sheets of this craft foam in this 5-inch wide score tape, and now I'm cutting these panels to 4 inches by 5 inches, just so I have a variety of sizes in my craft drawer for when I'm ready to create. And if I find that these are a little too tall for what I'm creating, I just take and trim them down really quickly, and I'll use those scraps, as I mentioned before, for other smaller items that I need foam adhesive for. So as I mentioned before, this really came out of me finding that they had maybe changed the formula a little bit on my craft foam that I preferred before, and it was sticking to my scissors and I wasn't loving it. So this was what came about of me kind of searching for another option. And so far, I've been really happy with it. You can see I have a big stack of these panels ready to go. Now, one thing I did want to mention is when you remove the backer from this, you can actually save this backer to use in your craft room. Sometimes I find that I remove the adhesive backer too soon, and what I'll do is I'll just place it on one of these sheets to kind of hold it without ruining the adhesive. Now, when I'm in my craft room creating and I've finished my card front and I want to place it onto my card base with a little bit of dimension, I can grab one of these panels and remove the backer and place it right in the center of this card front. This particular card front measures 5.25 inches by 4 inches, and you can see this just nestles in there really nicely. And the other benefit of this is that from the side, the edges of the craft foam look really clean. You don't have any like jagged edges that you can get from tearing your foam tape. So it looks really clean from the side. So there you have it. That's how I create my own DIY foam tape. I hope this video was helpful for you, and I hope you got some tips and tricks for creating along the way. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and comment below and let me know your favorite part about this. I would also love it if you would subscribe and turn on the notifications here on my YouTube channel so you don't miss any of my paper crafting and card making video tutorials. Thanks so much for watching today. Thanks for hanging out with me. And until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.